There is a kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. And if you have felt it, you already know exactly what I mean. Even if you have never been able to explain it to anyone else. You go to bed early. You do everything right. You give your body the rest it supposedly needs. And yet when morning comes, you open your eyes, and the first thing you feel is not energy, but heaviness. It is as if the day has already taken something from you before it even begins. You lie there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, and a quiet question begins to form in your mind. Why am I already tired? I have not done anything yet. I have not run. I have not worked. I have not struggled through anything difficult. And still something inside me feels drained. And then the second thought comes faster and sharper. Maybe something is wrong with me. Maybe I am just lazy. Maybe I just do not have what it takes to function like everyone else. That is usually where the story goes. Most people never question it. They accept the label, they accept the explanation, they try to fix themselves by pushing harder, by forcing discipline, by blaming their lack of motivation. But what if that explanation is wrong? What if the problem is not that you are doing too little, but that something inside you has been doing too much for too long? Because what you are experiencing is not physical exhaustion. It is something deeper. It is your nervous system reaching a limit that it was never meant to reach and trying to tell you in the only language it knows how to speak. The problem is that no one ever taught you how to understand that language. So you misinterpret the message. You call it weakness when it is actually overload. You call it laziness when it is actually protection. To understand this, you need to start with one simple truth. Your nervous system does not care about your schedule, your goals, or your expectations. It only cares about safety, and it does not distinguish between physical danger and emotional stress. To your body, a difficult conversation, a moment of rejection, or a constant background pressure can feel just as threatening as something physically dangerous. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, your breathing becomes shallow, and if that pattern repeats day after day, your system never fully resets. Imagine running a marathon, but instead of finishing, you are told to keep going indefinitely. You would not just feel tired, you would start to break down. And that is exactly what happens when your nervous system is constantly activated without recovery. It begins to send signals not because it is failing, but because it is trying to survive. The first signal appears in a way that is easy to overlook but impossible to ignore once you see it. It is the quiet collapse of your ability to decide. Simple choices begin to feel heavier than they should. You stand in front of a menu and cannot choose. You open your closet and feel strangely overwhelmed by something as basic as picking what to wear. By the end of the day, even deciding what to eat feels like too much. This is not a lack of discipline. It is decision fatigue at an emotional level. Every interaction, every interpretation, every adjustment you make throughout the day consumes energy. If you are someone who naturally notices more, who reads between the lines, who senses shifts in tone and energy, you are processing far more information than the average person, and every piece of that processing requires effort. Your brain is not just thinking, it is constantly evaluating, filtering, predicting, and adapting. And that process uses real biological resources. It consumes fuel, and at some point that fuel runs low. When it does, your system begins to conserve energy by shutting down non-essential functions, including your ability to make decisions. That is why small things start to irritate you. That is why your patience becomes thinner. That is why you feel overwhelmed by things that normally would not affect you. It is not because you are becoming weaker. It is because your system has reached its limit. The solution is not to force yourself to decide better. It is to reduce the number of decisions you have to make. Simplify what can be simplified. Create routines that remove unnecessary choices. Give your brain space to focus on what actually matters. This is not about becoming rigid. It is about being strategic with your energy. The second signal is more physical and often more frustrating because it feels like something you should be able to control but cannot. You lie in bed at night and your body refuses to relax. Your shoulders remain tight, your jaw stays. Clenched, your stomach holds a subtle tension that never fully releases. You tell yourself to calm down, to breathe, to let go, but nothing changes. This is what happens when your nervous system becomes stuck in a state of activation. It has learned to stay alert because at some point being alert was necessary. Maybe it was because of unpredictable environments. Maybe it was because you had to constantly anticipate reactions or outcomes. Whatever. The reason your body adapted by staying ready. The problem is that adaptation does not turn off automatically. Even when you are safe, even when nothing is wrong, your system continues to behave as if something could happen at any moment. And so it holds tension, it stays prepared, it refuses to fully relax. Telling yourself to relax in this state does not work because the issue is not conscious, it is physiological. You cannot think your way out of a system that is operating below the level of thought. What you can do is signal safety to your body in a way. It understands. One of the simplest ways to do this is through your breath. When you inhale briefly and exhale slowly, you activate the part of your nervous system responsible for slowing everything down. The longer exhale becomes a message that says, there is no immediate danger. Over time, repeated signals like this begin to shift your baseline. They do not fix everything instantly, but they create a path back to balance. The third signal is the quietest and often the most misunderstood because it does not feel like distress. It feels like absence. Things that used to move you no longer do. A conversation that once made you feel connected now feels flat. Music that once stirred something inside you now sounds distant. Achievements that should feel meaningful pass by with only a brief flicker of satisfaction before fading into nothing. This is not always depression. It is often a protective response. When your system has been overwhelmed for too long, it reduces the intensity of all emotions to prevent further overload. It lowers the volume not just on pain, but on everything. And while that protects you from being flooded, it also disconnects you from what makes life feel alive. You may start to wonder if something is missing, if you have changed in some fundamental way. But what is really happening is that your system is trying to create space. It is trying to give itself room to recover by limiting how much it has to process. The way out of this is not to force yourself to feel again. You cannot demand openness from a system that is still protecting itself. The way out is to reduce the overall load. Create moments of quiet where nothing is required of you. Protect your time not as an indulgence, but as a necessity. Begin to recognize your limits before you reach them instead of after. As you start to do this, something subtle begins to shift. The tension does not disappear all at once, but it softens. The numbness does not instantly lift, but small moments of feeling begin to return. And with them comes a different understanding of yourself. You begin to see that you were never the problem. The problem was the way you interpreted what was happening. You thought you were failing, when in reality, your system was adapting. You thought you were not doing enough, when in reality, you were doing too much internally without realizing it. There is a kind of strength in recognizing this, not as an excuse, but as clarity. Because once you understand what is actually happening, you can respond differently. You can stop fighting your own system and start working with it. You can replace judgment with awareness and pressure with intention. This does not mean everything becomes easy. It means everything becomes possible in a different way. You begin to move through your day with a little more space, a little more patience, a little more understanding. And those small shifts begin to add up. So the next time you wake up and feel that familiar heaviness, instead of asking, what is wrong with me? Ask a different question. What is my system trying to tell me? Because the answer to that question is where change begins, not through force, not through shame, but through understanding. And once you start listening, you may realize that your body has never been against you. It has been trying to guide you all along. You just needed to learn how to hear it.